The story begins with a 20-year-old boy named Will hunting. He lives in a very poor neighborhood, but he works at the world's most famous university, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It sounds good to hear, but the truth is that Will does not study there. He just cleans the buildings of the university. One day, when he was cleaning the streets, he noticed a very difficult math question written on the board. This question was written by Professor Gerald Lambeau. He challenged the entire college that whoever solves this question, his name will be published in the university's books, and he will get both name and honor. Will looks at the question carefully, and his mind gets stuck there. He keeps thinking about the same question all day long. Even when he is at the bar with his friends, his mind is still entangled in the same question. Suddenly, he leaves his friends and goes straight to his small old house so that he can sit all night and solve that question. He does not have a board at home, so he writes the answer on the bathroom glass and keeps trying to erase the mistakes. After many hours, he finally solves that question. A few days later, when he goes to work, he writes the correct answer on the board while cleaning. And when he sees the answer written on Professor Lambeau's board, he is amazed. He cannot believe that a student of his solved such a difficult question so quickly. He gets anxious to find out who this genius is. That same evening, Will is out with his friends. He meets a few people on the way. One of them makes fun of a girl. Will recognizes the boy. He was the same person who used to bother him a lot as a child. In anger, Will asks his friend to stop the car and without thinking twice, gets out of the car and attacks him. Will punches him, and as soon as he sees Will, a fight breaks out between the two groups. The police arrive there shortly. Will's friends try to save him, but it is too late. The police arrest Will. The next morning, Professor Lambeau gives a lecture to his students. Everyone is watching him because everyone wants to know who it is who solved such a difficult question. But no one in the class answers. Professor Lambeau gets a little upset and says, if someone has solved the last question, then I will give you an even more difficult question. He says that this is the same problem that he and his colleagues have been working on for the past 2 years, and now the same question is written on the board. Here, Will comes out of the police station and tells his friends that his next week is the court date. In the evening, he goes to his job and again sees a simple question written on the board. He starts solving it quickly so that no one sees it. Then Professor Lambeau comes out of his office and sees Will writing on the board. He asks in anger, "What are you doing here?" Will immediately apologizes and steps back. The professor thinks that this boy is a mischievous boy who is just writing on the board for no reason. They try to catch him, but Will suddenly disappears from there. When the professor looks at the board again, he finds out that the correct answer is written there. He is shocked to see this. After work in the evening, Will goes to the bar with his friends and tells them that he has been fired. Now he will not be able to come inside the university and solve the question. His friends ask, "Why did you fire him?" Will says in a joke, "The management has made a change." The next day, Professor Lambeau decides that now he will find this mysterious genius. He goes straight to the office of the cleaners and asks, "We need the name of a boy who works here." But the staff there think that the professor has come to complain about cleanliness, so they do not tell Will's name immediately. After a while, it turns out that Will was not doing the cleaning work at MIT on his own, but it was a community service given by the court. Now it was time to hear his case. Professor Lambeau is also present in the court. Everyone there sees that Will is fighting his own case. He shows so much information about law and society that everyone is surprised, but there are many old cases against him. So the judge sends him to jail and gives him a $50,000 bail. After a while, Professor Lambeau comes to meet Will in jail. He tells him that the judge has allowed him to come out of jail, but with 2 conditions. First, Will have to study with the professor every week.
Second, he will have to meet a psychiatrist every week so that his habits of anger and crime can be reduced. Will feels that he does not need a psychiatrist, but he accepts this condition to be free. After coming out of jail, he starts studying with the professor and solves the most difficult questions easily. The professor is very impressed by his ability. But therapy is not that easy. The professor calls many different doctors, but none of them can handle Will. The first doctor gets scared because Will makes fun of his book. Will says that he read his book in one night and there is nothing special in it. Hearing this, the doctor leaves the session in anger.
The second psychiatrist tried to handle Will in a different way. He tried to hypnotize him and put him to sleep, but this method does not work either. Seeing this, Professor Lambeau almost gives up. Then he remembers his old college friend, Sean McGuire, who is now a psychiatrist. He goes to Professor Sean's office and tells him about Will and invites him to a restaurant together. Sean refuses at first because his schedule is very busy, but Professor Lambeau explains to him that Will is not an ordinary boy, but a genius of a different level. He compares him to that famous mathematician who had made great discoveries without any medical education. Hearing this, Sean finally agrees to meet Will. In the first session, Will tries to annoy the doctor with misbehavior and jokes as usual. He makes fun of Sean's painting and says that it is completely useless. Sean does not get angry at him and remains calm. But when Will makes fun of his personal life and his wife, Sean gets very angry. He says in a stern tone, "If you take my wife's name again, I will destroy you," and ends the session with this. Later, when Professor Lambeau sees that Sean is upset, he tells him that he can drop the case if he wants to. But Sean clearly says that he will meet Will again next week. After the first session, Sean keeps thinking about Will for a long time, especially when he mentioned his wife. These memories make him feel lonely. On the other hand, Will moves forward in his life. He goes on a date with the girl he met in the bar, Skylar. Skylar tells him that she has received a lot of money from her father in inheritance, and she is thinking of taking admission at Stanford University. Both have a good evening, and in the end, they kiss in a diner. Now comes the second therapy session. This time, Sean takes Will to the park bench, not to the office. As soon as Will starts his old jokes and taunts, Sean stops him. Sean says that he has thought a lot about Will's words, and now he has something to say. He says that Will may be well-educated and smart, but he knows nothing about real life. He can learn about every artist in the world from books, but he has never left Boston to see their real art. He can recite books written during the war, but he has never seen the battlefield. He can recite love poems, but he has never truly loved a woman, nor did he fully open himself to her. And most importantly, until Will tells his heart's pain himself, no one can understand the pain of being an orphan. Sean says that all this cannot be learned from books. The real lesson is taught by life itself. In the next session, Will remains silent the whole time. Sean sits quietly because he knows that Will is just testing him, and he turns out to be right. In the next session, Will breaks his silence and tells Sean a dirty joke. After this, the two start chatting. Will tells him about his date. Sean asks if he will meet Skylar again. Then Will accepts a truth. He says no, because he does not want Skylar's perfect image in his eyes to break. But Sean explains to him that Will is actually afraid of his own perfect image, not the girl's. In real relationships, you have to accept each other's shortcomings and habits. Sean tells his wife's story, who recently passed away due to cancer. He says that he remembers her small habits and tantrums the most. For the first time, Will listens carefully. On the other hand, Will goes to meet Skylar at her hostel. Skylar is surprised because Will had not called her for a long time, but she agrees to go out. The next day, both go to watch a dog race and have a great time. Skylar asks Will where did he grow up.
Will hides the truth and jokingly says that he has 12 older brothers. Skylar laughs and says it's a lie, but Will swears and makes it more interesting. He even has to promise that he will soon introduce Skylar to his family. After this, Skylar asks Will, how does anyone know that he is his true companion? This question sits in Will's mind, and the next day he asks Sean the same thing. Sean smiles and tells him that he understood it at first sight when he saw his wife. Then he tells the story. Once he got a ticket for a very rare baseball match, but he missed that match because he met a beautiful girl in the bar that day. Sean says that he still has no regrets about missing that match. Skylar insists again and again that Will introduce her to his real family, but Will is still hesitant to tell the truth. That's why he decides to introduce her to his friends. Skylar easily gets involved in his group. She jokes with everyone and drinks beer, but at the end of the night, Will's mood is ruined by Chuck's words. On the other hand, Professor Lambeau meets Sean in a diner and asks questions about Will's therapy. Lambeau doesn't really care about Will's past. In fact, he wants to know what Will is going to do next in his path. Sean says that he will not pressure Will because Will will have to decide for himself what he wants in life. Lambeau gets angry hearing this and says that he has already introduced Will to big people, but he doesn't know that Will's friend Chuck has come to meet them instead. Chuck asks for money and spoils the deal with his bad behavior. On the other hand, Will and Skylar spend a romantic evening and their relationship deepens. Skylar asks Will directly at her house. She says that she has to go to California to study at Stanford.
She wants Will to go with her, but Will immediately refuses and makes all kinds of excuses. Skylar explains to her that he is stuck in his small world where he doesn't get any challenges and he is afraid of new things. Will gets angry hearing this. He thinks that Skylar is just joking with him and he is just one-time pass for him because he is poor. Skylar is surprised and asks why he is so tensed about money. She cries and says that if she had to choose one between her rich father's wealth and her father, she would always choose her father and not money. Skylar clearly says that she is also scared, but at least she is honest in front of Will. Will argues again. That's when Skylar remembers that Will had repeatedly told the false story of his 12 brothers. Now Will completely loses himself and starts shouting. He says that Skylar will never want to know his real life because the truth is that he is an orphan and people had treated him very badly in his childhood. Skylar makes him believe with tears in her eyes that she wants to know everything about him, no matter how painful it is. In the end, Skylar tells him what is in her heart. She loves him. But Will's heart is already closed, and he says in a cool voice that I don't love you. After this, Will meets Professor Lambeau. Lambeau gets angry because Will's actions in the meeting with the business partners ruined everything. Will gets angry and says that he is not sure whether he really wants this academic career or not. Now Will and Professor Lambeau's conversation becomes even more difficult because Will's quick-witted words humiliate Lambeau. Lambeau says that he should have at least a little gratitude from Will. There is a debate between the two and Will gets angry. After a while, Will is called to the National Security Agency for a job in NSA, where he is promised a golden career. But Will refuses. He says that he does not want to ruin a common man's life just for political schemes. After this, Will meets Sean again. Sean asks him why he rejected the NSA job. Will laughs and says that he is waiting for a better opportunity. Sean, who is his psychologist, asks Will if he has a friend with whom he can have a heart-to-heart talk or if he ever feels lonely. Will starts counting the names of famous philosophers instead of answering him. Then Sean explains that real relationships can only be made with living people. Sean asks again, if Will is really serious about his future, then what does he want? Will, joking, says that he doesn't mind being a bricklayer or a shepherd. Sean understands that Will is just kidding and running away from his truth. In anger, Sean kicks him out of his office. Will is shocked and asks him why he was kicked out. Sean says that he is just hiding his real identity. While talking to Sean, Will asks him where his wife is. Sean calmly replies that she is no longer in this world. Time passes and Will calls Skylar, but Skylar has stopped waiting for him because Will does not take any final decision. Skylar says for the last time to take care of herself and leaves for California. Meanwhile, Will starts working with his friend Chuck in Boston. Professor Lambeau says on the phone that Will is not fulfilling his responsibility. If he reports to the court that Will is not attending the session, Will go back to jail, and his conscience will be clear. During the break, Chuck asks Will what he is going to do in life. Will jokingly says that he doesn't want to become a lab rat and solve math problems. He wants to live in Boston and have fun with his friends. But this time, Chuck openly scolds Will. He says that Will is ruining his ability. Chuck even agrees that he wishes Will to leave his house and make his own life. Meanwhile, Lambeau finds out that Will is not going to therapy with Sean. In anger, Lambeau threatens Sean that he will tell the judge the truth and accuses Sean that he is pushing Will towards crime again. Sean tells Professor Lambeau that he doesn't care if people laugh at him, but he cannot ignore Will's feelings. Sean tells him that Lambeau has never accepted true love and he has been alone all his life, but Lambeau is not ready to listen to him. He feels that Sean is jealous of his success. He is surprised to hear this, and he feels that Lambeau is just arrogant. Sean explains that he only cares about Will's future and his real desires, while Lambeau's pressure can make him a failure. Then Lambeau quietly leaves and leaves Will alone with Sean. Sean tells Will that his fight with Lambeau is not personal, but is related to the past. Then Sean changes the subject and tells Will that he has prepared a report for the judge. Will asks him if he has other patients like him. Then Sean shares his personal life for the first time and tells him that his father was a drunkard who used to beat him up a lot. He tells Will that whatever happened with him is not his fault. In the beginning, Will tries to make a joke, but then he breaks down and exposes his real emotions. Finally, everything becomes clear that his father was a drunkard and used to beat him up a lot. Will comes to Sean for his last session and tells him that he has decided in one of the companies suggested by Professor Lambeau, and he is happy with this decision. Sean also says that he has decided to travel around the world and gives his number to Will before leaving. In the evening, Will celebrates his birthday with his friends. His friends gift him a car that they had made from old parts. Meanwhile, Professor Lambeau comes to meet Sean. Both apologize to each other and go out for a drink in a bar. On the other hand, Chuck comes to pick up Will, but this time he sees that Will is not at home. Chuck is very happy to see this, just as he had always wanted in his dreams. Will had left a note for Sean. Sean reads it and finds out that Will has left his job and gone to California to meet Skylar. In that note, Will writes the same line that Sean had told his friends when he had decided to leave baseball and meet his future wife. And in this beautiful way, this story ends. This story teaches us that in life, the real victory is not with a degree or a job, but with true love and recognizing your real purpose.